Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're gonna really dive deep into what makes an economy free.
Oh,
You
no.
guys have been looking into this, and we're here to kind of break it all down with you.
Yeah.
We found this super interesting piece from FinShots,
Okay, cool.
and it all starts with kind of a head scratcher.
Okay.
Why would a company like Flipkart,
Mm-hmm.
the Indian e-commerce giant,
Yeah.
choose to set up shop in Singapore, only to come back to India for their IPO?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Right.
It really points to this whole idea of a business-friendly environment.
Yeah.
You see Singapore constantly tops these global rankings for ease of doing business.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in fact, they're usually number 1 or 2 on lists.
Wow.
Like the Heritage Foundation's Index of Economic Freedom
Oh, okay.
and the Fraser Institute's report.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not just the amazing food scene that draws businesses in,
Right.
but what exactly makes an economy free?
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Well, the FinShots article breaks it down pretty nicely.
Okay.
Basically, a free economy is all about minimal government interference.
Hmm.
We're talking low taxes so companies can reinvest their profits and grow.
Right.
Strong property rights are crucial too,
Yeah.
giving investors that peace of mind.
Okay.
And of course, free trade is a big one.
Yeah.
Imports and exports flow easily without getting bogged down by those heavy tariffs.
So basically, fewer headaches for businesses.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Less red tape, faster growth.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And the article brings up this really interesting example.
Okay.
Hong Kong. They've been the reigning champs of free economies for over 50 years.
Wow.
Over 9,000 international companies have set up shop there.
Whoa, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And I read that recently there's been a huge influx of tech companies going to Hong Kong,
Really?
potentially bringing in something like $50 billion in investment
Wow.
and creating thousands of new jobs.
That's incredible.
That's insane. Yeah.
And they have virtually zero tariffs on imports,
Wow.
except for the usual suspects,
Right.
like alcohol, tobacco, and fuel, of course.
Of course.
No quotas or anti-dumping laws either.
It's like a magnet for businesses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So similar to Singapore,
Hmm.
they keep taxes super low to attract those international players.
Right.
No capital gains tax, no dividend tax.
Wow.
And they've even got this network of tax treaties.
Oh, wow.
So companies don't get double taxed.
That's a pretty sweet deal.
It's a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're enjoying this deep dive so far, hit that like button and subscribe to The Other Opinion
Yes.
for more insights like this.
Definitely.
Now, here's a question that's probably on your mind.
Okay.
If these places have such low taxes,
Yeah.
how do they pay for things like public services and infrastructure?
Well, it's a balancing act.
Okay.
They rely less on direct taxes, like income tax,
Yeah.
and more on indirect taxes.
Okay, so indirect taxes. What are those exactly?
Think of it like this.
Direct taxes are what you pay directly to the government
Mm-hmm.
based on your income.
Okay.
Indirect taxes are levied on goods and services.
Gotcha.
A good example is VAT, or value-added tax.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
So instead of taking a big chunk out of people's paychecks,
Right.
they make up for it by taxing consumption.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But what about things like healthcare and education?
Mm-hmm.
Don't those usually rely on government funding?
They do, and that's where private investment comes in.
Okay.
These free economies often encourage private companies to take a more active role in developing infrastructure
Hmm.
and providing those essential services.
So it's less about the government doing everything
Right.
and more about creating an environment where businesses can thrive
Yeah.
and contribute to the overall well-being of the economy.
Exactly.
This is fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
If you've got any other opinions about this, make sure to leave a comment below.
Yes, please.
We love hearing from you guys.
Absolutely.
And don't forget to share this episode with your friends. Let's spread the knowledge.
Let's do it.
Now I know what you're thinking. This all sounds great, but there have to be some downsides to this whole free economy thing, right?
Well, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
There are some potential drawbacks that the article brings up.
Okay.
For example, there's the issue of income inequality.
Mm-hmm.
When you have limited wealth redistribution mechanisms, the gap between the rich and the poor can widen significantly.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
If the focus is primarily on economic growth,
right.
social safety nets might take a back seat.
And this can put a strain on public services,
Right.
like healthcare and education.
Yeah.
If those services are primarily funded through private investment,
Yeah.
access and quality can become uneven.
So it's a trade-off.
Right.
Lower taxes attract businesses and boost the economy.
Yeah.
But you might end up with less government revenue to invest in those crucial social programs.
Right.
And what about things like worker rights?
Yeah.
Are those at risk in a system that prioritizes profit maximization?
It's definitely a valid concern.
Yeah.
When profit is king, there's always a risk that worker protections, things like fair wages and safe working conditions, could be compromised.
So can an economy truly be considered free if it doesn't guarantee basic rights and protections for its workers?
That's a really good question.
It's a question worth pondering.
Yeah.
Now, the article also mentions this interesting paradox.
Okay.
On one hand, you've got concerns about income inequality.
Right.
But on the other hand, data suggests that extreme poverty is actually less prevalent in free economies.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, the poorest 10% in these economies tend to earn more than their counterparts in less free economies.
Wow.
It suggests that economic growth, even if it's not perfectly distributed, can still have a positive impact on lifting people out of poverty.
It's a complex issue, isn't it?
It is.
There are always trade-offs to consider.
For sure.
Speaking of trade-offs, we've got to talk about India. Where does it stand on this whole economic freedom spectrum?
Well, according to the Heritage Foundation, India's current ranking is mostly unfree.
Oh, wow.
They're sitting at 126th out of 165 countries.
Wow, geez.
And the Fraser Institute's report doesn't paint a much better picture, ranking India 84th.
So there's definitely room for improvement.
Yeah.
What do you think, listeners? Should India strive to become a freer economy?
A good question.
Share your other opinions in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yes, please. You know, it's interesting to think about, like, the history of all this.
Yeah.
Like, the idea of economic freedom isn't exactly new, you know?
Right.
It goes way back
Right.
with thinkers like Adam Smith pushing for limited government involvement in markets.
Yeah, the whole invisible hand concept.
Right. Yeah, used to.
But it's not like we're saying just let the markets run wild with no rules on them.
No, not at all.
Okay.
The article doesn't dive too deep into this.
Yeah.
But the debate about finding that sweet spot between government regulation and economic freedom, it's a hot topic these days.
Yeah, that.
There are a lot of different schools of thought out there.
So it's about striking that balance, right?
Okay.
Too much regulation can stifle innovation,
Right.
but too little can lead to chaos and unfair practices.
Exactly. And even the definition of what's considered fair,
Yeah.
you know, can change depending on the culture and the political system.
Okay, now things are getting interesting. The article briefly touched on the potential downsides of free economies.
Okay.
Let's unpack those a bit more.
Sure.
What are some of the big concerns?
Well, one of the major ones is income inequality.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't have strong mechanisms for redistributing wealth,
Right.
the gap between the rich and the poor can become a huge problem.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
If the main focus is on economic growth,
Mm-hmm.
things like social safety nets might get overlooked.
Right, and that can lead to problems with public services like
Yeah.
healthcare and education.
Yeah.
If those services are relying heavily on private investment, you might end up with unequal access and quality.
So it's a trade-off, isn't it?
It is.
Lower taxes might attract businesses and boost the economy.
Yeah.
But you might end up with less money for the government to invest in social programs.
Exactly.
And then there's the whole question of workers' rights.
Right.
Can a truly free economy exist without strong protections for workers?
That's a great question.
Yeah,
And it's one that deserves a lot more discussion.
totally. If you guys have any other opinions on this, drop them in the comments.
Yes.
We love hearing from you.
For sure.
And don't forget to share this episode with your friends. Let's get more people in on this conversation.
Engaging with different viewpoints is crucial for understanding complex issues like this.
Now, back to the article.
Okay.
It brings up this interesting paradox.
Okay.
While there are valid concerns about inequality,
Right.
data shows that extreme poverty is actually way less common in freer economies.
Right. The poorest 10% in those economies tend to earn significantly more than their counterparts in less free countries.
Wow.
It suggests that economic growth, even if it's not perfectly distributed, can still help lift people out of poverty.
So like we were saying before, it's not a black and white issue.
All right.
There's a lot of nuance here.
And that's where government policy becomes really important.
Okay.
You know, how can we design policies that promote economic growth
Yeah.
while also addressing social concerns and protecting vulnerable populations?
It's a tough balancing act that policymakers around the world are wrestling with.
It is.
There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
And that's precisely why informed public discourse is so important.
Yeah.
Understanding how economic systems work, hearing different perspectives, and holding our leaders accountable is crucial for creating a more just and prosperous future.
It's all about asking the right questions, isn't it?
Exactly.
What are the trade-offs? Who benefits?
Right.
Who might get left behind?
Yeah. Those are the kinds of questions we want our listeners to think about as they explore this topic further.
If you're finding this deep dive valuable, hit that like button and subscribe to The Other Opinion
Yes.
for more thought-provoking discussions like this.
Definitely.
And tell your friends about it.
Please do.
The more the merrier.
Expanding the circle of informed individuals is essential for a healthy society.
Okay, let's shift our focus back to India.
All right.
The article highlighted India's current ranking as mostly unfree, according to those economic freedom indices.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's complicated, you know.
Yeah.
India's economic policies have gone through a lot of changes over the years.
Right.
And the debate about how much the government should intervene in the market is still ongoing.
We'll delve deeper into India's specific economic journey in the next part of this deep dive.
Okay, sounds good.
Stay tuned. Okay, so we're back, you guys.
We are.
We've been talking about free economies, you know, the upsides, the downsides.
Yeah.
And we left off talking about India's ranking as mostly unfree.
Right.
So let's pick up there. India has been on quite the economic journey, right?
Absolutely.
Since gaining independence, India has gradually moved away from that socialist-leaning economy toward a system that embraces market forces.
Right.
But let's be real.
Yeah.
The legacy of bureaucracy and red tape still makes things kind of tricky for businesses in India.
It's like trying to run a marathon through quicksand sometimes.
It's like trying to run a marathon through quicksand sometimes.
Yeah.
Not exactly the best way to encourage growth and innovation.
I know.
So what can India do to climb those economic freedom rankings? We've seen success stories like Hong Kong and Singapore.
Yeah.
What can India learn from them?
Well, one of the biggest things is simplifying regulations.
Okay.
And cutting back on those bureaucratic hurdles.
Yeah.
Streamlining the process of starting and running a business can really attract investment and boost innovation.
Less paperwork, more action.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's tax reform.
Yeah.
Creating a tax system that's predictable and competitive
Right.
can give businesses the confidence to invest and grow.
Lowering the corporate tax burden could be a game changer.
It could.
Give companies more breathing room to reinvest their profits
Yeah.
and create jobs.
Absolutely.
And let's not forget about property rights.
Right.
Ensuring that property ownership is secure and transparent
Yeah,
is vital for attracting investors.
for sure.
It's all about creating a level playing field where businesses can operate with certainty and trust.
Exactly.
And investing in education and skills development is key too.
Right.
Giving people the tools and training they need
Yeah.
to succeed in a dynamic economy is crucial for long-term growth.
Absolutely.
Knowledge is power.
It is.
A skilled workforce can drive innovation and productivity. And if you're loving this discussion and want to hear more deep dives like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and share this with your friends.
Yes, please do.
Now, it's not just about technical skills, right?
Right.
What about things like critical thinking and problem solving? Those are pretty important too.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Fostering those skills along with an entrepreneurial spirit
Yeah.
is essential for people to thrive in today's rapidly changing world.
So it's a multifaceted approach.
It is.
Reforms, infrastructure, education.
Yeah.
It all works together.
It does.
And if you've got any other opinions on this, be sure to leave us a comment.
Yes.
We're always up for a good debate.
Always.
Now let's bring it back to our listeners.
Okay.
What does all of this mean for you? Why should you care about economic freedom?
Well, understanding these principles can empower you
Okay.
to make better decisions as consumers, investors, and citizens.
Okay.
It's about recognizing how economic policies affect your everyday life.
It's about taking control of your economic future, right?
Exactly.
Making informed choices about where you invest your money,
Yeah.
what you buy, and who you vote for.
For sure.
It's also about understanding that with economic freedom comes responsibility.
Right.
There are always trade-offs to consider.
It's about finding that sweet spot
Yeah?
between individual liberty and the well-being of society as a whole.
And it's about engaging in constructive conversations,
Absolutely.
questioning assumptions,
Yeah.
and being open to different points of view.
And that's what The Other Opinion is all about.
Exactly.
We encourage you to like this episode, subscribe to our channel,
Yes.
and share it with everyone you know.
Let's keep this conversation going.
Yes, let's expand the circle of informed individuals.
And on that note,
Yeah.
We're wrapping up our deep dive into free economies.
Right.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those other opinions coming.
Keep them coming.
Oh, and just a quick heads up. This has been an AI-powered podcast. So while we aim for accuracy,
right,
always double-check the facts and form your own opinions.
Always good advice.
See you next time.